Hi, in this episode, we are talking to Imaad Mohamed Khan. For the knowledge of the audience, Imaad, can you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Nitin, for having me. It's an honor to be talking to you today. Yeah, my name is Imaad, like Nitin said, and I often write on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of people get to know of me. But apart from that, I work as a data scientist. I recently started a job as a data scientist at a company called Vahan, where we're helping low-wage workers find jobs using WhatsApp. So that's in a gist about me. But then before that, I started off very early as an electronics engineer. I did my bachelor's in electronics engineering from MS Ramaya Institute of Technology in Bangalore. Graduated in 2014. After that, I got a job at a company called Synopsys, which is into electronic design automation. Yeah, that was my first corporate job. Lots of learning on the job. But then one learning that I had over there was that I didn't want to be in that field. So that was a realization that I had. And then I started applying for master's programs. Got a master's at MIT in Internet Technologies and Information Systems from TU Braunschweig in Germany. That's where I left after a year, 2015 to about 2017, and I was in Germany doing my master's, and that's where I started working in data. So that was my shift towards more computer science, towards more data science, because I had an option there to choose data science specialization or networking specialization or algorithms, theoretical algorithm specialization. And I wanted to be with data. So that was my first entry into data, so to say. Started doing a research project, my master thesis as data science projects. And yeah, so I finished my master's, got of course, during the first year, we had a lot of different subjects. And that's where got into data. And after my master's, I was thinking about applying to jobs. I applied to a couple of jobs while I was in Germany, but I didn't get what I wanted. So I came back to India, came back to Bangalore, and started applying for jobs here, and started working at a company called Indigene as a data scientist. A lot of interesting problem statements in the pharmaceutical industry there. Mm-hmm. And was working there, got an opportunity with Entrepreneur First, where Entrepreneur First helps people start startups. They get about 55 odd people from across the country. For a period of 3 months, they pay you to look for a co-founder to work on an idea, and got through that program. We started a company out of that called Recreate.ai, and then did that for a few months, but then we weren't going in the direction we wanted, and then I came out of the company and then started this new job. So that has been my journey, and yeah, it has been really fascinating. And alongside, when I came back from Germany, right, so that's when I started writing on LinkedIn, because I like literally had 0 people I knew in the data science community in India, right, because I was from an electronics background. I went and did my master's in Germany. So, and most of my friends were doing their masters in the US. And so I was literally left with no network over here. So yeah, I started writing, became friends with a lot of people online. LinkedIn has helped me a lot. Job finding happens on LinkedIn, and that's when I started writing. And yeah, like you said, I write a lot. I like writing as well, and yeah, that's the journey so far. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. So it's what would be your advice to someone who is doing a career switch, or who is someone who is just don't have any technical experience, so who wants to start off in data science? So what would be your advice to them? What would be the first step that they should take to get into data science?
Sure. I also did a career switch, right? So I didn't do a bachelor's in data or even in computer science. So that I had to do a lot of learning during my master's. So that was initially a bit difficult, because if you don't have the background, it's really, it takes time more than anything else, right? It's just that you have to devote yourself be determined that you want to do, that you want to get into this field, you're ready to do what it takes. And data science in itself is a multidisciplinary field, right? So you
Yes.
can come from very varied backgrounds and still be in a position to contribute. And then what you should be doing really depends on where you're coming from. And that's why it's also difficult to find generic advice which suits your profile on the internet, right? Because people give advice according to their backgrounds. And again, any advice I would give would be biased to my background. But having said that, in general, if you see the famous Venn diagram by, I think, John Conway, which has mathematical skills, hacking skills, and domain skills, domain knowledge. A mixture of all these three would make you a good data scientist. And if you're just getting started, if you come from a domain background, beef up on your math and computer science skills. If you're coming from, when I say domain background, if you've been a finance professional for long, or if you've been a pharmaceutical professional for long, you've been doing something in a domain, right? Or if you come from a computer science background, learn some domain knowledge in the company you're working at, in the area, in the business you're working at, and maybe get some mathematical skills, like maybe probability, beef up your probability, your statistics, your calculus, your linear algebra. And if you're coming from a mathematical background, then you are possibly lacking how to write reusable code or the best practices of writing code and all of that, right? The computer science aspects of it, right? What does version control mean and all of that. So learn upon that, and of course the domain as well. So depending on your background, you need to be gearing up in different areas, but in general, have a good mathematical background, right? Like that's the key on which your algorithms would run, and basically get a good grasp of what does probability theory say, or what is statistics, what are the kinds of statistics that there are: descriptive, prescriptive, predictive, and then even linear algebra, matrices, discriminants, so on and so forth. But then keep moving, keep a fine balance between theory and practice. That's also something that's very important. If you go all in on theory, you will always be doing theory. You might as well become a researcher or a teacher in that field, because there is so much theory that you can always keep doing. So keep a fine balance between learning some theory, doing some projects, and keep jumping between the two. And I think that would be a good place to start.
Some really good points there. Like even if you're coming from, like you said, a pharmaceutical background or anywhere else that's not data science, you can always use that knowledge to, because data science is applicable to every industry. So you can always use that, leverage that knowledge to the industry that you are, or you can target those industries where you already have that domain knowledge. But quickly, can you say like how much math is required to get into data science?
This is a tricky question, in my opinion, because there's never going to be enough math that is required to be a data scientist, because you always find something new. Like
that's right.
Very recently, I was reading a new, not in data science, which is causality, right? Like how do you estimate the effect of a particular treatment, right? Which is an entirely, and I was reading a lot of papers and stuff of that. There's so much there that I don't know, and it's incredible that you always feel that there's always so much to learn. Okay, but having said that, there is some basics that you're absolutely required. Like for example, machine learning algorithms, the algorithms that you use, what is happening behind the scene is definitely really important for you to understand, because that's when you will be able to make the right judgments and right calls. So if I were to answer that, just get your basics of different areas of math right, and understand algorithms well. Like for example, every algorithm could be broken down into the representation of the formula, the optimization formulas that you use, and behind the scene, like for example, gradient descent, right? Gradient descent is using calculus. So the way you would ideally approach this is, maybe you want to learn today about linear regression or logistic regression. Look at what formulas are being used there. Go and read about those formulas, understand why is there a logarithm in logistic regression? Why do you even need that, right?
Yeah.
And what does log mean if you
Yeah.
haven't been
Yeah.
up to speed on log?
Yeah.
So get that intuition, and
Yeah.
I would say go do it the top-down way instead of
Yeah.
bottom-up, where you're reading all the theory. In fact, one advice that I keep giving everyone is that start building a project. And once you start building a project, you would say, hey, I want to use logistic regression for this because I want to do classification. And okay, when you're doing classification, you might use logistic regression, but then what is the equation that is used? Why is this equation used? And what does it mean? What does an odds ratio mean in mathematics? Why do you even use, what is logarithm of p by 1 minus p? So on and so forth, right? You go backwards, and then now you understand the project that you're working on, the algorithms that you're using, and the math behind it. So I think this is one way that you can organize your thought process.
Yeah, I think that's very good points. Like I think it's from what you said, it's like get an overall idea about like linear algebra, calculus, statistic probability, and then depending on the problem, you just research more into it. Another great or things that people are divided between two groups is which I always see on LinkedIn is R, Python. What is your opinion on that?
In fact, I wrote a poem once on LinkedIn on Python versus R. I remember there was a lot of response to that. I'm not saying people who use R are bad people, but just kidding. So this is again a lot.
From there, I know that you like Python more.
Yeah, so I use Python most. I think that's what I've been using since many years now. But I've had this discussion myself, so I know both the point of view. So that's why I'm not going to get into this war now. I'm going to just say, depending on the background you're coming from, and depending on what you find more intuitive. For me, it was Python because I studied it during my undergrad, and also found it a little bit more intuitive than R. I also tried learning R, but it didn't pick up in my head. So Python was much more quicker for me. Having said that, like coming to your point as well, I see a lot of companies implementing stuff in Python as well, right? Because, like you said, it's much more productionizable. There's a lot more stuff being built out there. In fact, all the latest development, let's say in TensorFlow or in PyTorch and all these deep learning libraries also is happening in Python and other languages, in Swift, in C++, even in JavaScript as well. But then I don't see it happening in R, TensorFlow specifically. So Python versus R, take your pick if you're just getting started, because Python is used across the industry, because Python is more productionizable, and because people who use R are bad people, use Python.
Okay.
No, I didn't say the last one.
So I think many companies, when I was doing my internship and even the company I'm working at the moment, they are quite flexible with which software that you use, and then as long as you can produce the results. So coming from that point on to the technical experience, if someone wants to start off in data science, like yourself, you started with electronics and then moved on to data science. So what is your advice to people who has no technical experience, and then also do they go for a master's degree in data science or a PhD in data science to get into data science?
So my bias is that I did a master's, so it will likely help you. It helped me. So having said that, a lot of these skills you can learn online. In fact, for free on most occasions as well. You just need to be able to find the right resources that you need for your understanding. So so I think, and be ready, right? You have to be ready mentally that it's going to be a transition. You might have to learn things, and anytime you are moving into a different field, it's going to be a bit difficult initially. It's going to be like, what am I even doing? You're going to, that's how even I felt initially. Like there's so much, and then you're like, I don't know anything, right? You have that feeling all the time.
Yeah, but you get overwhelmed by the information, isn't it?
Absolutely. But then if you have that determination that, hey, for me it was that, right? I didn't have an option as well. For me, come what may, I have to do something here. And you just get pushed in a way. But but yeah, just have the determination. Be ready for some tough times. Especially if you're coming from a non-technical background, it takes some time to understand the terminologies in itself, right? Like people just keep throwing around the words, like what's your F1 score, or what's your accuracy, or what's your loss, what's your learning rate, or something like that. They just throw terminologies at you. So it takes time to get used to the terminologies. It takes time to even understand what's happening, right? So just give it time and keep at it. It should happen. It will happen. My bias is doing masters, but you can also do it without a master's as well.
Okay. So that's great advice. Like always, do not expect quick results, isn't it? Like it will take time. And then if you stick to it and then follow the path, you'll definitely be successful. That's your that's in a nutshell that you said, isn't it? We have almost reached the end of our time. So fine. What would be your advice to aspirers, like who wants to get into your data science? If you could give them one advice, what would be that?
One basic advice I always give to everyone is to keep doing projects, keep showing your creativity, be very creative. It's a creative field, and it pays you to be creative. I mean, it rewards you if you're really creative, right? So think about all the different kinds of projects that you can do with the data around you, and do something. Just do, right? Like build stuff, and that's where you will use your computer science, your mathematical, your domain knowledge, get all of them together, and then create magic.
That's a really, really good point. So unless the employer can't see any projects, they don't know like what is the value that you can bring. So it's more like that GitHub projects and things like that will really add value.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Imaad, for taking part in this video podcast. It was really nice to have you. And then I'm sure we'll meet again in the future.
Sure, Nitin. Thank you very much for having me. All the best to you for all your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.